Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the briefing session for June. I declare this meeting open at 6:02. Kaya Marman, Kaya Yoga, Kaya Bridie, Yarnanuk, Nalak Kadij Winjialak Nini, Nalak Kadij Nija Buja Baal, Wajak Nunga Buja Nalak Nini, Kora Kora. Nijie Borawan. The town of Bassendean acknowledges the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation as the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to elders past and present and acknowledge their continuing culture and the contribution they make to the region. Councillors, I'll just ask if you have all signed the Declaration of Civic Duty and Responsibility. The declaration that councillors sign is, I make this declaration in good faith and declare that I will duly, faithfully, honestly and with integrity fulfil the duties of my office for all the people in the town of Bassendean according to the best of my judgment and ability. I note that we have one councillor running late, which is Councillor Burke, and so I will ask if she can fill in that form when she arrives. We have an apology from Councillor Ames, and I don't believe we have any. We have an apology from Mr. Cameron Woods, Chief Executive Officer, and I welcome our Director of Corporate Services, Mr. Paul White, who is Acting CEO. Councillors, do we have any declarations of interest on any of the items on the agenda? No? Okay, I have no announcements by the presiding person. There appear to be no statements that have been emailed into the council. There are no members of the public to make a statement. Questions? Nil? Oh, sorry, apologies. I do. Councillor Polifka was in your way. I couldn't see you. So we're at statement time. Would you like to make a statement? Okay, if you'd come to the microphone, state your name and street address and the item that you're speaking to. Okay, we're just going to check that the microphone is on. Yeah, okay. And if you could move as close to the microphone as possible. Thank you.
Okay.
Excellent.
Bifocals do funny things with it. Okay, she hasn't started the clock. This is good. Val Humphrey, 127A Whitfield Street. But I'm also speaking for the Friends of Bindaring Wetland tonight. I opened the briefing agenda or the council agenda wondering if there was anything about the EMRC issue and came across the public open space strategy, which was dear to my heart, so I'm really pleased that I had that happy accident. And I'd like to thank you for, I see that some of the suggestions that I made you were able to take up, which is great, particularly pertaining to Jubilee Reserve. But as you might expect, I've come here to talk about Bindaring Park. And I need to remind myself at what level does Bindaring Park, this is a strategy that relates to many other strategies and policies, etc. But at what, this is a rhetorical question, I guess, because it's not a proper question in your context. In what strategy document does it get drawn up as a continuous wetland floodplain reserve? Town Planning Scheme 11 did a dastardly act of removing the reserve status of the constructed roads that dissected portions of the park so that its continuous nature is obscured in this document and in the Town Planning Scheme. It's obscured from public authorities, state government agencies, and this public open space strategy undermines it too by further describing it as 4 separate parks with 4 separate classifications. At the very least, the different components of the 4 things should say how they relate to each other, and I'd ask that you consider this, please. B4, Bindaring Park North, is a neighbourhood classification, and it should say that it's continuous with B2 and B12. B12 is described or classified as a local nature reserve, and that should be continuous with B4. B2 is of a district classification, district nature, and that's continuous with B4 and R4. R4 is a state MRS reserve, so maybe doesn't need to say that it's continuous with B2, but it actually is. And so, but you'd never know by looking at this particular strategy document. If you don't read it really, yeah, it's... the mapping information in Appendix 4 continues to misrepresent the strategy of creating a continuous reserve, but the map, which is Appendix 5, shows it as one continuous park, so that's great. Thumbs up for Appendix 5. So where in this scheme, or maybe it's written somewhere in this strategy, but I couldn't spot it in my quick reading. Where is it, this public open space strategy strategising to have this reserve be a continuous reserve? 2 minutes?
Would you like me to treat that as a question and get the administration to answer that question for you?
Yep, if I could just
Sorry.
continue. Yep. Right. I think that the strategy should be stated and obvious to people that the strategy should be to complete the acquisition of Time Planning Scheme 4A and amalgamate the titles into a single reserve. And in doing that, also implement the motion that was passed back in, I think it was July 2022, which was that the sections of road that had public open space on both sides of that road, that should be maintained, that that road section should be also included or remain at that stage at public open space. And I can stop there, but I just wanted to bring all those things into the open again so that we can get back to it.
Okay. If you would like to remain there, I just notify that Councillor Burke has entered the chamber at 6:10, and I would ask that the declaration be handed to Councillor Burke for her to sign and fill in. Now, if you don't mind, Mr. CEO or Acting CEO, would you like to have the administration provide a response to the question that was within that deputation?
Yes, I can ask Michelle to provide a response, please.
Thank you and good evening, councillors. Hello. Look, I can give a very brief response, but I will probably take most of that on notice so that the technical experts in the organisation can respond to that. But what I did want to say is that in the feedback that we document that we put together, again, there's a comment in there, an administration comment in there responding to some of the things that you've said, and it just notes that these areas are currently separated by roads. They are all part of Mindaring Park and management is considered holistically. So I'm only going to respond by providing you with that feedback from the Executive Manager of Sustainability, I think, and Environment that provided that. But I'm very happy to just take all of those comments on notice and prepare a response so that's ready for the Ordinary Council meeting next week.
Thank you. I can email this through, if that makes sense.
That would be really helpful, thank you.
Thanks. Would it be possible to email that response to councillors and Ms Humphreys?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just confirm that Councillor Burke has signed the declaration sheet. Thank you very much. So all councillors are present have signed the declaration. We'll now move on to public question time. And again, I would ask if anyone in the audience would like to ask a question. No, thank you. Deputations, there are nil. So we'll now move on to the report items. So we've got the first item, which is the Public Open Space Strategy, Public Consultation Review. And I would ask Mr CEO if you would like the staff to provide a brief summary of this.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'd ask the Director of Community in Place to please provide a summary to Council. Thank you.
Okay. And I don't know if you'd like to sit in the spare space there. That would be appropriate. Or no? And if you could turn on your microphone, that would be excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Through
Can
you,
I-
Madam Mayor,
sorry,
and
can
good
I just
evening.
ask Councillor Plifka, would you turn off the microphone at the podium? Thank you.
Yep. Good evening, everybody. It is my great pleasure to present the public open space strategy after the public comment feedback has been received, and to seek adoption of the public open space strategy this evening. I'm going to provide a brief summary of the feedback that we received and probably a closing remark, and then open it up for questions from there. So feedback was received from 11 respondents, all of whom gave their time to provide useful, encouraging and valuable information which will be considered as part of the implementation plan. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to look at that feedback. There's some great information in there that's going to be very useful to the town. And I did want to acknowledge the time and effort that the community has taken to do that. It was also pleasing to note a number of positive comments about our public open space. For example, that the public open space in Bassendean is our greatest asset, and also the acknowledgement of the support and effort of Town of Bassendean personnel over the years. Because this is a high-level strategy, most of the feedback is aligned to the strategy recommendations, and as such, minimal changes are required to the draft document, noting, as I've already said, that all comments will be considered for the implementation plan that will support this strategy. There are some particular changes that I would like to note. The Ashfield Master Plan has been reprioritised and brought forward, and that's now highlighted in the plan, in the strategy in Action 2. It's highlighted in red to make it easier for you to find as well. Aboriginal heritage sites are now indicated with an asterisk. There's some minor changes to terminology, and we've also added dual quality rankings in Appendix 6 to reflect that some reserves have a sporting and recreation function as well as being a nature space. This is a very important strategy for the town, as it underpins many of the town's strategic objectives, projects and initiatives, including the town's local planning strategy, which commits us to undertaking a public open space needs assessment. It's also reflected in the council plan. The report, when I first presented this report late last year, I did make a few comments, and I'll just repeat those this evening to refresh you all. But essentially it confirms that we do have ample public open space at present, meeting and in fact exceeding state government standards if we also include regional open space. This does take into consideration our challenges around land availability and funding capacity, and shows that we compare favourably to other comparable local governments. Going forward, this document will provide us with a clear strategic direction and decision making to guide quality public open space provision, development, management and use of public open space in the town for the benefit of the community, as well as for the livability of the town. I think that's all I wanted to say. I'm happy to open it up for questions. Thank you.
Councillors, questions? If not, I've got a Councillor Carter. You mentioned in that preamble that inclusive of regional public open space. Now, regional public open space is not ours. It is yes, but I would not consider. Well, regional public open space, confirm if I'm correct, but regional public open space should not be considered as part of the percentage of public open space available to our community. Is that correct?
Yes, we're just providing that information so it gives us the context of all the public space we have, inclusive of regional open space, but the purpose of this strategy is for our local open space.
Correct. Okay. Councillor Carter?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did have a really good look at the public open space strategy. We've looked at it before. With the Bassendean Park one, I was actually going to bring up the need that those roads must remain as part of the reserve. Who knows what's going to happen in the future, and I think it would be ridiculous to remove them because the park requires that. So I think I'd like it be some sort of recognition.
Councillor Carter, I'm going to
There's
restrict you to questions.
Yeah. So could we have, I'll reach out, I'll change it. Could we have some sort of recognition that these roads must remain? The other thing that I've would like to... I had a bit of confusion on this one. Under the guiding principles, page 104 in the attachments, it has that the guiding principles for this, excuse me, the guiding principles are equity of access, sustainability, design and functionality, health and wellbeing and community focus. There's nothing in the guiding principles that the most important thing for some of these nature areas are to be preserved, protected and enhanced, and that access is not necessarily the key thing in that particular respect. So I'll leave those theirs. This strongly prioritises access and overuse. Can you tell me why that has been written that way? And do you not think, I'm trying to put all this as a question, that it's inappropriate for some of our nature reserve, particularly the town-controlled areas of the Asheville Flats, the Success Hill and Bindaring Park, that these don't need access and shouldn't have access? Now, I also bring that up because on the map, this one
So,
page...
Councillor Carter.
Sorry.
Okay.
There are 3 questions on this, and they all relate to the guiding principles, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
I know it's complex.
Acting CEO wishes to make a comment.
Oh, okay, so sorry.
In fairness, Councillor Carter, perhaps one at a time might be of assistance.
Okay, that first one was number 1, but they all relate to each other. There is a map on...
Sorry, Councillor Carter, that may be the case, but the officer doesn't have the question written in front of him and needs
and
time
I'm very
to
happy
actually
to put
consider the
these in
response.
writing. I don't expect you to remember. Please forgive me.
So,
But,
Councillor Carter, you will forward this in writing to the
I will do
administration
all of that,
through the
yes.
acting CEO.
I will do,
Okay, thank
and
you.
through you too,
Yes,
Madam
thank
Mayor.
you.
Page 145 shows a map which gives, R's and B's and C's and so on. The Bindaring Park is designated or categorised as a B2. Has this any relation to the listing on page 147, which has A's, B, B2, B3 and C? Because if they do, the B2 designation on page 145 is opposite to the assessments listing, pages 155 to 156 on Appendix 6.
Councillor Carter.
Councillor Carter,
Categorises it as a C. So is there a mismatch here?
we'll take that on notice.
Yes, I'm sure you will. But I thought I'd bring up all these questions because they confused me no end. And that's where we get to the point of dog access too, on and off leash. There's the only reserve or park in Bassendean where dogs are off limit is Point Reserve. Now, that to me seems quite strange. And is there any way that at least some part of the Bindaring Park can be considered to be off limits to dogs? Because it's meant to be an on-leash area, but it's always, as far as I can tell, more honoured in the breach.
So can I
Thank
make
you.
a suggestion here? Okay. I would suggest that if you email these questions to the officer, I am very interested in some of the answers as well. So again, if the responses can be provided to all the councillors, that would be excellent. I am interested in the no dog areas and whether that has been considered for other areas. So has that been considered for other specific areas in respect to this particular process?
Through you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Carter, for those many interested questions, which the majority I will take on notice, I'm afraid. With regard to the questions around dogs on leash, you'll note in the strategy recommendations that item 8 actually specifies that we'll be doing a review, and that will form part of our implementation plan, that piece of work.
Okay, so can I have some information, if you're going to email, can I have some information about how that process will work, timelines, and how it will be implemented into the strategy into the future? Because if it's not part of the strategy now, then I'd like to know how that will become part of the strategy into the future.
Essentially, this is a strategy, so it's a high-level document. Any actions will form part of the implementation plan, which is the next stage. So,
Okay,
but I'm still happy to provide some information back to you
That would be-
outside of this forum.
that would be good. Councillors, further questions? Councillor Carter, would you turn off your microphone? Councillor Pevka?
Page 26 of the Public Open Space Strategy. So just it's a comment in relation to the accessibility of the public open space. So I note that the third dot point under the table there discusses how we would consider the need for public open space by reference to regional roads. So I see there that there's a comment that and that's just prior to section 7.2, that if we nominally used Walter Road as the suburb boundary, then that part of Bassendean that was south of Walter Road would achieve public open space of 9.67, so effectively closing in on that figure of 10%, which was the target under the Stevenson-Hepburn plan. What do we use that information for? Does it matter in terms of when we create these, I suppose, blocks of where the public open space is? So how do we deal with that? I suppose in terms of once money is starting to be generated as from particular areas, how we then decide where we would apply that money.
I might have to get you to clarify if I get this answer wrong, because I'm not quite sure. So the point of this strategy is to provide us with a framework that helps us to prioritise what work and when. That's then guided by things like community need, proximity to other nearby locations, our funding capacity, and there's a number of other things that would inform that. Our first priorities are probably going to be where there are gaps, which are identified in this document. There's a couple of areas, I think Kenny Street and one other location, which escapes my mind at the moment, and then ageing infrastructure and so on. I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but I guess I'm trying to shed some light on how the decision-making process will work from here, given the assessment process we've just done to develop this strategy.
Yeah, so in terms of, so you're raising funds from the subdivision of land in a particular area, does that then go back into the immediate vicinity? Is it ring-fenced in that way, or would that money find its way to anywhere in the district?
Are you talking about developer contributions when you ask that question?
So the developer, well, I suppose that the figure of 10% features twice in that the goal is that 10% of land would be public open space, but then also 10% is the development contribution. But just in terms of, and you may have already answered it in that this is sort of a high-level document, and then we get back into those details in maybe the next document, that when money is raised, where it then finds its way back to.
Generally speaking, and though I will confirm this with the Manager of Planning and Regulation, anything that comes out of a developer contribution scheme would go back to that area. I think that would be a general principle. But you're right, this is a high-level strategy, and a lot of that information will form part of the implementation plan, which will be a big piece of work in its own right, informed by this analysis, but also, as I've mentioned previously, community feedback.
So part of that work would be to elaborate on this analysis, saying that one area, so suburbs is largely irrelevant. You say area is a functional area determined by physical landmarks, major roads, and so we would have maybe a series of different areas, and we would try and ensure that money raised from that area would find its way back into that area. Is that sort of the goal?
Yes, I guess the short answer is yes. Yes.
So if you don't mind, can I have a follow-on question to that? Clearly in respect to contributions, my first question is, those contributions would go into a separate reserve, is that correct? Right, okay. My second question, sorry, Councillor, the Acting CEO would like to
Sorry, Madam Mayor, at least a separate account, whether it's a reserve or not, or whether it's separated within the normal accounting function, but yes, separated.
Okay.
And the presumption is that the funds, if the POS is actually provided, obviously it's provided within the area, but if it's not, and there's a contribution paid, the presumption is that, as the Director of Community in Place said, that the presumption is for the funds to be used in that region. in that
Okay,
area.
so this is where I have an issue, because clearly developer contributions in areas that already have an overabundance of public open space would not require expenditure to acquire more public open space in that area, and would in fact require, would it not, expenditure in other areas that are lacking in public open space. So I want some clarity over that, if that's at all possible, because I do think there's an anomaly there that might arise. I do understand that expenditure on degraded infrastructure can happen in a certain area where the contribution comes from, but if the contribution is coming from an area that already has an overabundance of public open space, then my interest is, can those funds be used in areas that have a lack of public open space? So that's my question on that one. Again, happy for you to bring back a response when you're ready. Councillors, further questions? Okay, we'll move on now. So thank you for that. We now move on to 12.3, policy reviews. Again, Acting CEO, would you like to provide any commentary on this one?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just very briefly, and then I might hand over to the Manager, Governance and Strategy. This is really just a continuation of our ongoing policy reviews. Council are probably getting reasonably used to seeing these on the agenda every month. We're trying to bring a few policies back to Council for review each month, and where we think that perhaps the policy isn't necessary anymore because it's a repeat of what's in legislation, or for other reasons, we're recommending that the policy be revoked, as there are a couple here. Otherwise, we're reviewing the policy, bringing it up to date, making sure all the legislative references are correct, and recommending other changes as we think are appropriate for Council's consideration. Jo?
Okay, councillors, Manager of Governance.
I'll just be very brief, Mayor Hamilton. So as council members can see, we have reviews of the behaviour complaints policy, code of conduct, council members, committee members and candidates, gifts to departing council members policy, council protocols policy and the unreasonable customer conduct policy. I won't go into all the detail, but what's proposed there is for the review of the behaviour complaints policy and the unreasonable customer conduct policy to be endorsed or adopted, and to actually revoke the gifts to departing council member policy and council protocols policy. And the reason we're having that, not to dwell on it too long, because the ones that are being requested to be endorsed are just, it's just a regular review. The ones that are being requested to be revoked, in particular the gifts to departing council members, does not actually reflect our current or even recent years' practice. So that's why that one's being brought to your attention, and nor does actually the council protocols policy, which refers to such things as mayoral chains and orders of the way in which you will be placed on agendas, etc., etc. So it's just a real tidy up, and so that, you know, into the future you've got you know, really quite strong concentration on, you know, and focus on the big ticket items that are there. But very happy to, and in particular what we wanted to showcase, the unreasonable customer conduct policy. This is actually when it should be reviewed. So we're doing catch up on others, and now we're actually introducing those ones that need the review. So very happy to clarify any questions or take any questions on that one, Mayor Hamilton.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillors, do we have questions on these items? Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is committee presiding member appointments. Thank you, Ms. Frau Humphreys. So committee presiding member appointments, again, Mr. Acting CEO, would you like to?
Thank you,
comment
Madam
on
Mayor.
this one?
Yes, very briefly, this really is just resulting from the ongoing legislative reforms with the state in relation to local government. So there's now a requirement for council to resolve by absolute majority the presiding member and the deputy presiding member of any committees of council. So we obviously have two committees here. One is the Audit and Governance Committee and one is the Complaints Committee. So we're recommending that council, as an interim measure until the elections in October, resolve to appoint the current presiding and deputy presiding members of the Audit Committee and to appoint the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor as presiding members of the Complaints Committee.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions on this one? We'll move on to the next item, which is item 12.5, Audit and Governance Committee. Again, if you would like to provide any overview on that, although I think the report is self-explanatory.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, it was a reasonably light agenda this week for the audit committees, last week. So the main item really was the audit planning memorandum from the Office of the Auditor General, which just sets out how they're going to conduct the audit. It's in progress at the moment, the interim component of that audit. We also updated the audit findings log fairly substantially to incorporate completed internal audits for Regulation 5 and Regulation 17 and the actions that management has taken or intends to take in response.
Okay. Councillors, any questions on this item? We'll move on to the next one, which is 12.6, Monthly Financial Report, May 2025. Again.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this one will come straight to the council meeting and will be distributed with the council reports later this week.
Apologies, yes, I did know that. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Also, 12.7, accounts paid. Councillors, I would suggest any questions on this one that you email our Director of Finance and Director of Corporate Services, sorry, and responses can be provided.
Okay.
The annual budget documents will be in the OCM papers. There's Mr. Acting CEO, did you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I need to, I guess, reiterate that they are as we have workshopped with council. So we are just in the final stages of preparing those for in their statutory form to come into the council reports to be released with the overall council agenda, and in the final stages of preparing that report for council. So you should get those with the rest of your council papers. And I guess just mindful too that obviously it is going straight to council, so please, if there are any questions or anything that councillors are unsure of, just reach out to us and we can try and provide you with that information prior to the meeting.
Okay. So, councillors, this brings us to 12.9, which is the supply and installation of floodlighting Jubilee Reserve. It does have a confidential attachment because it's an RFT. We are required to go behind closed doors to discuss this if there are any questions. Are there any questions?
If there are any questions on the confidential attachment, Madam Mayor, otherwise we can proceed.
Okay, no questions? Okay, so councillors, this brings us to the close of the meeting at 6:35 p.m. The next briefing session will be held on Tuesday, the 15th of July 2025, commencing at 6 p.m. Thank you, one and all. And we'll wait for the